It's always been there. Um, an interesting thing, though, is I think he was a customer of mine in the city. Marin, do you remember? Did he used to buy come
Yeah,
home
we
with my cheese?
started coming in getting cheese and bread.
Up here.
The first.
Yeah, I think he had, okay, so that was about 2010. And then somewhere in about 2015, 2016, I was looking for information about a dear friend of mine who had passed away now 40 years ago, who had gone to school in Geneva at Ecolant, where James had gone. And all of a sudden, I'm in Facebook conversations with all these former Genevans. And all of a sudden, James's name starts popping up. I had no idea. I didn't. So apparently, we have several connections through time. So anyway, it just hit me real hard. I guess it hit everybody hard. I guess my feeling is I'm 10 years older than him, and probably most of you here. I'm starting to get arthritis. You know, little stuff like that. I can't do stuff I used to be able to do. Some things. And you know what? He's never going to have arthritis. He's in my mind, he's always going to be the way he was the last time I saw him. Back in January, I was in France. I was in Paris. And I walked past a toy store, and the whole window of the toy store was filled with Tintin, or Tintin if you're American, paraphernalia, mugs of Snowy the dog, and all these little Tintin toys. And some of you may know, James was a little bit obsessed with Tintin. And so I took a photograph, and I texted it off to James, and it said, "Thinking of you." And I think he answered something like, "That's my kind of a toy story." And I guess I'm never going to delete that message because that was my last communication with him. And anyway, we do have a few submitted things. Well, first, let's start with people here. We'd love to hear your stories about James or Finn. How many people knew him as Finn here? Okay. And the rest of you knew him as James, I guess. It's interesting. The people in Geneva only knew Finn. They're like, "James? Oh, you mean Finn." So, let's hear the stories. I've heard a few, and I'm sure there's others. And then I've got a few that were submitted by people that couldn't make it today. So who wants to break the ice here? Oh, come on.
I will. Okay. So it's 1977. You're all laughing. Some of you are laughing because you can't imagine that that was a time that people actually met each other. But it was real physical meeting. 33 West 93rd Street. Apartment, it was called 9G. It was the big cooperative building. And there were a whole bunch of really rowdy people downstairs. Greg, Catherine, and Finn.
Hey, what's your name?
I'm Bogdan
Hey.
Bushel. Yeah, hi Greg. And so there were these bunch of these really rowdy people downstairs. And so my brother Alex and I decided to go down and meet them. And that was a great place to start a relationship because they were the coolest family that we could know because they got bread from Little Italy. They got their wine from nice places that actually had corks in the bottles. My parents drank Ernest and Julio Gallo by the gallon. And if it went like that, it was good. And so we suddenly found ourselves immersed in a world where there was a bouillabaisse or there was something else that was happening. And I was infinitely amazed as I was learning to type that Jim Knight could type error-free at 100+ words a minute on a manual typewriter. His first computer had to be slowed down because, and James I think probably started computers just so he could make his father's computer work so he wouldn't break it. And so things about the world became better because James was just this awesome music person, food person, steal the wine out of your... The rule was, if you put the bottle back downstairs, they never knew. So to this day, it was really important to just put the bottle back. Flash forward, my parents are divorcing. I'm going to this small southern high school. I am a New York kid who was supposed to go to music and art. And James goes to Purchase. and I go off in my world wanderings, and I come back. And my first year at Purchase, James was almost done, and he says, "Hey, I've got a space in my apartment." And so we lived together, not only as children, not only, and then in college. And that living together in college was the source of probably 80% of my stories. Like it was epic to live with James, because you would be telling a story, or he would be telling a story, and you would realize that what had happened wasn't as interesting as what he was saying. You were there, and you would not contradict him, because his story was excellent and really, really, really perfect. And so, for me, like how I met James was, there was this amazing storyteller. There was this amazing person, and throughout time, when you guys met, you came over to dinner at our house, and it was like Summit Street was about to sort of end, and there was this new change to the way things were going. And so it's been fun watching from a little further away, and yet very present. So that's what James was. James was the better story than you could ever tell.
Thank you. You just reminded me, James and I had many conversations about our fathers, and they both served in the war. They both told us stories about what they did in the war, which turned out not to be what they did in the war, or maybe after the war. And I know that your dad would always go up to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx for Easter and get a fresh basket cheese for Easter. So when James told me that story probably 10 years ago, I'm a cheesemaker. That's what this is not my job, although it's starting to feel like it. So most years for Easter, I would make an illegal raw milk, fresh basket cheese for James for Easter, just to honor his father's service and to keep the tradition going forward. We wondered if our dads ever met in the service, and I think we figured out that they probably hadn't. But anyway. Who's going to be next?
I'm going to just tell a little anecdote to follow up on what Buckman's talking about. So, I have way too many stories about James. Sean Tyroller. I met James. He lived across the hall from me at SUNY Purchase. I was a hippie. He was a punk. It was oil and water, but not for long. And the first birthday that James had that came around after I knew him, he shaved my head. That was my birthday gift to James, which I then did for him, which was also a gift for him. But anyway, on his storytelling. So James really was a great storyteller. And my mom, who knew him, our families got very close from our friendship. We ended up vacationing together and spending a lot of time together. And I was telling my mom recently, trying to explain to her that James told 110% of the truth. And that was what made him such a great storyteller. To the point that I didn't coin this phrase, but somebody who knew him well would do a little lick of James's storytelling, and it went like this. My brother wrestled an alligator on the space shuttle twice. Anyway, I might have more stories, but that's a little taste of how hard you worked at the truth.
Okay, tough act to follow.
You want me to come up there?
Sure. Actually, Marvin, I think, wants to know. Marvin's not sure.
Oh, there he is. Hi.
Oh, he's walking.
He's hilarious.
He's there.
He definitely hated
I'm Greg. James was my brother. He's still my brother, right? So let's see. There's tons of stories, but the college stuff is good. I'll tell you the story of our last fight. When I was 7 and he was 10. It was our last fight because, well, I'll tell you the story. So at 93rd Street, we were in the backyard and doing what brothers do. So if anyone has a brother, you know how you were, Richard.
No comment.
Right. You know what it's like having a brother. So we were doing our thing, and then it turned into a fight, and he was bigger than me. Grew to be bigger than him. Then he was bigger than me, and we were doing our thing, and I snuck back into the apartment and got my mother's sewing scissors, and I right into his arm. I won. So I snuck away to get back into the house because I had won. And then I sort of found myself like in a heap on the ground, and I wasn't sure why until I sort of pulled this like rock out of my head. James had hefted from across the yard in his head. And so we both picked each other up and we went into the apartment, and James with the scissors and me with the rock, and my mom just fucking beat us both. Didn't take the rock out or the scissors out, or just beat us both. And she reminded us, you're brothers, you're gonna be best friends for life, this is the last fight. Guess what? It was the last fight. So,
Yeah.
there's my kid story.
Nice.
Who's next? Yeah, Emmett? I don't know what made me think of this. Oh, I know what it is.
My name is Clifford LaFontaine,
Okay.
and I knew Finn and Grego as bumps. I was the bread purchaser for Amagansett from Mama Papalardo's Bakery, long gone. I have a photograph of your first fight,
Oh no.
whether the diaper won or lost. To me, Finn was always the most kind and considerate person you could possibly have. And he's brought me from the things that I gave him on his first birthday. I carved some wooden blocks with the alphabet and the word numbers on each side and colored them. I said I take inspiration for him becoming a computer genius. But he took care of me and brought me and managed to get me up to the modern age. So I called him and said, Finn, I have some trouble. And his reply was not what or everything, give me your screen. And he would fix it no matter what he was doing, what he was engaged in. It was immediate. It wasn't something, call me tomorrow, call me later. It was always, give me your screen. He was very responsive. We were all utterly devastated. But that, unfortunately, happens. And I'm so delighted to see so many wonderful people here to honor somebody immensely dear to me.
Did you
Thank
say
you.
you knew him since he was 1 year old?
I knew him when he was a bump.
Prior to.
I knew Grego when he was the other bump. And I have a photograph of them wrestling over the diapers, in the diapers.
Cheers.
We're on a roll. Who's next?
I'll say a couple words.
Introduce yourself.
Andrew Cunningham. Met Greg in high school. And I spent a lot of my high school days at that house on 93rd Street. And we spent a lot of time in the room there playing music. And James had not gone off to college just yet. And the room next door was all painted black. Because he was in this punk stage with all those posters, and you know, I was heavily influenced by the Clash. Like my brother introduced me to Clash, and then James as well. So I spent a lot of time in that house. So in the beginning, James was like kind of like a second brother because that family took me in and fed me and felt like they were sort of a second home. Then later on, when I got out of college and the job market wasn't so great, I was doing sort of lots of different things. I'm not sure how it happened, if it was Greg or my father who contacted James and said, "Can you give my son a job?" And this was sort of in the early days of Beta Unlimited. And so he said he took me on, and I worked with James doing computer work for many years. And what I really loved was that he had so many ideas. He wanted to do so many things, and he would have these technological projects that he wanted to work on. He wanted to have a watch which would open up and spin and do this like show you the time by like a laser scanning show. And he would literally actually work on these projects. So not only was I working there, but I also got to hear all of his ideas. And I always found him to be one, really smart, intellectual. So he was kind of intellectual sort of mentor for me, although like a lot of stuff he's talking about philosophy and all those things, I just was way over my head, but I would listen and be like really interested. So, you know, a brother in a sense, a mentor, and an advisor too, just in sort of all aspects of life. That's really what I remember. And then after 9/11, you know, I left the city, and James eventually went to the country, and I never thought he would leave the city. That's like the last thing I thought James could ever do. But yeah, has not really hit me yet. Like some folks, I still think of him as, you know, as a kid, and then as a like, full-grown adult, and I always feel like somewhere in between there. But I'll miss him greatly. He had a huge effect on my life in terms of teaching me actual skills that I use all through my other jobs. So I'm grateful to that, and just grateful to have the experience to live with him and know him. So, thanks.
Marvin, James and I had this running gag for years where I'd say if we ever talked about politics, which we did very rarely because who needs it, but I'd usually say something like, do I have to like make the cheese and take down Fox News? Come on, you know, it's a technology company. Do I really have to milk the cows, make the cheese, and, you know, crash Fox News? I have this strange thing where people that have left me come back to me in dreams, and I don't put anything more into it than, you know, you can think whatever you want. And I'll back away. Sometime in late January, James showed up in a dream, and it's like, James, he says, I'm not really dead, it's a cover story. I'm going after Fox News. I wish. Like I said before, I don't think that dead people are completely gone from us. You know, they live in our hearts and all of that, but I think they're still kind of involved in our lives, if only through the time that we spent with them and how it influenced us. I actually think it goes further than that. I think they're actually still kind of really there with us. And, you know, he had such a generous heart. I mean, he's really good at what he did, but he was also very, very generous and willing to help anybody who had a technical issue or whatever. We also shared a lot of food obsessions together. So if I was out in the woods and I found too many of a mushroom, half of them went to him. You know, if I made a torchon, a foie gras, and there was some left over, you know, we shared stuff back and forth like that because I knew he'd appreciate it. And I'm trying to think of some of the other food connections between us, but there were many of them over the years. Who's next?
One of James' creations, the Gout Society meetings. We had, right? So we'd meet at James' place in Summit, and everyone would bring some type of meat. And it was always a question of, what do you have? Well, I got antelope. I've got venison. I've got duck. You know, it'd just be like a crazy, like, you know, gout-inspiring meeting of the knuckleheads. And James, not a knucklehead. Us, somewhat knuckleheads. Yeah, a lot of fun. Great memory.
Actually,
one.
he made a little website about that, and it's still
Oh,
online.
did he? Oh, I
Yeah,
haven't
so
seen-
if
oh,
you
I'd
look
love
up
to
the
see-
Gout Society,
Oh, that's
you will
brilliant.
find it.
Immortalized.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have one more story.
Yeah.
Just work related, but always stuck with me, is that he loved to, you know, the Nigerian scam, email scams with the
Spam scam. Yeah.
spam. He loves to engage them.
Yeah.
And he would see how far and how long he could string them along. And he actually got me into doing it for a little bit. And then I got scared. But I love that, like, that it was like that playful, like, well, let's go along, let's see where this is gonna end up. So,
Did you get them to send you money?
so classic. Yeah, we almost got their money.
The fun side of
Did,
it.
but I didn't keep it.
You know what? This is what James wants. He wants us to get together and run.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
not really a story that, I knew Finn indirectly through Kat, sister, and Greg, but I knew their mother really well. So I spent a lot of time with her out in the Hamptons and their father. And I have to say, the one thing that I hear a lot from Kat and whenever Finn was around was, I was going to be fed well. Because they loved food and experimenting, and their mother was such a great cook. I mean, I was a picky eater. She got me to like things that I would never have eaten ever in my life. And I think that Kat and Finn were in the process of putting together a cookbook of their mother's recipes and stuff like that. That was something they were working on. So I know if I can speak on behalf of Kat, that was a big thing for her with her brother that they shared. And I was privy to the tasting of some of this things. That's my story.
He had a really good rabbit stew recipe. Maybe it was his mom's.
Okay, somebody else.
I'm Ellen Lee. We moved to 9G, which was the building. My parents and I guess 9 other couples bought these 9 brownstones on 93rd Street. There was an urban gentrification happening, and Jim and Pamela were a couple that were part of it. And on the very first meeting of 9G, Jim arrived late, but had this big announcement. I have a son! We've named him James. And so this was the very first meeting of the buildings. And then when I guess I was about 5, I was, I think, in between, oh, Greg. I think I was a year younger than Finn and Greg. And we just became such good pals. And they were on the ground floor, so I was always running in and out of their apartment, and it was just this loose and relaxed environment. And I would always say to my mom, Mom, why can't you cook like Pamela? And she said, well, Ellen, she just, she's a really good cook. And I said, but I don't understand. And then the other thing I couldn't understand was, my bedroom window looked down on the garden, and my bedtime was 8:30, which seemed absurdly early because Jim was just getting home. And he would sit at the table in their garden, and the kids would be piling on him, so happy that he was home. Pamela was cooking dinner, and I was going to bed, and they hadn't even eaten dinner yet. And I would say to my mom, I don't understand. How come I'm going to bed and the Knights haven't even eaten dinner yet? And she said, well, Ellen, they're European. And I said, but they live in New York. And she said, Ellen, you know, Jim is from Ireland and Pamela is English. Okay, well, and Finn, you know, whatever Finn and Greg had, I had to have. They had the LL Bean sheepskin slippers, which Finn called the sheepskin bootkins. So I had to have sheepskin bootkins, and I used to love coming down in the elevator. And then we had these little Beatles Yellow Submarine metal pop-up things that are probably worth, I don't know, $100,000 now, if we still had them. But it was just such a wonderful, it was a beautiful thing, and I loved Pamela, and I loved Jim, and we moved to California, but that's a family that I will always love. And Kat, Kat, where are you? Oh, she's coming. No, I was looking for her. Okay, so anyway, my last funny story about Finn, because he was always such a Renaissance man. He was making basil and baking bread, and one November he was so worried about his bees because it got cold. But it was really funny when Finn wanted to become a bartender. He went to bartending school, and he gets a job. And so I said, okay, we'll come and visit you. And so it's like a Wednesday, and my friend Sharon and I come to this Italian restaurant, and we come in, and it's like almost nobody in the restaurant. We don't see a bar, so we say to the guy, do you have a bar? And he said, yeah, it's upstairs. So we go upstairs, like a quiet room, and there's Finn at the bar with like 6 chairs, totally empty. So we're like, hey, Finn. He's like, oh, hey. We come and sit down, and so we're sitting, and I said, how does this place stay in business? I mean, do they have any customers? And he said, actually, I think it's owned by the mob. I'm actually a little bit worried because they come up here and they have their meetings. And I don't want them to think that I'm hearing anything because I might know something and then something might happen to me. And I said, yeah. He said, I think I have to quit. And I said, well, the money can't be very good either. So I don't know. I was like, you know, I moved to California, and I don't know if that was the end of his very short but promising bartending career. But I think he would have made an excellent bartender because of his stories and his absolutely winning personality.
I think he might have had a very short stint. There was a restaurant on the east side,
Yes,
Finnegan's
exactly.
Wake,
Yes.
that obviously
Okay, and then he went
that
to-
he liked, you know, that I think the Knights liked it. And he worked there. I think he did bartend there for a minute. But the bartending, I remember him going to bartending school, and it sounded like he was going to be a super dedicated bartender.
Absolutely.
But I think like it might have been about learning how to make the drinks,
Yes.
and then he didn't much care about serving the drinks.
All those annoying customers.
Oh, there's Kat.
Gosh, Kat, what's going on?
See the other girl.
This morning? See that? Accident. Car accident. Oh, car accident. Holy shit.
I saw a picture of her yesterday. She was fine. So something must have just happened.
Wow.
Just one more thing. Since we're all talking about food, Jim would cook the main meal of the meat.
Yes.
Finn organized everything. Pamela made sure everything was perfect. And then Finn capped it all by marrying Maren.
Yes. Oh, cheers.
We all got incredible desserts.
Somebody offer that lady a chair. There we go. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. Better than you.
Yeah, I know.
We're just telling stories.
Okay,
You got a story?
I have a story to tell.
Okay.
I think so.
This morning story or a different?
No, not this one.
Okay.
Should I just tell it from here? Oh, okay.
So
Oh, boy.
Marvin's getting mad at her. So first of all, hi everyone. I'm Kat, I'm James' sister, and I'm sorry I'm late. I was hit by an automobile this morning. I'm okay. And the only reason they released me is because I explained I was going to here. And the doctor was like, I normally wouldn't, but I'll let you go to that, so. I have a lot of great stories to talk and tell about my brother. A lot of really, really good ones. But the one that keeps coming up over and over again is, Billy and I were trying to figure out the year. Andrew and Greg might be able to help me with the year this was, but both my brothers, James and Greg, and my father are baseball fanatics. And so as the daughter of a family of men that watch baseball all the time, I couldn't help but get involved some of the time. So the year that I started really noticing was when David Justice was in the Braves. So they had that game on, and I was like, ooh, who's that cute guy? And Greg was like, that's David Justice. And I was like, well, now there's something to watch. So I started watching some baseball, right? You agree? I get it. Big thing. Okay, so I'm starting to watch the baseball. It's all very involved. And so every time, Jenny, where is Jenny? She went back. Okay, Jenny is my cousin here from Atlanta. And my father was born in Atlanta, Georgia. So whenever we would visit Atlanta, we would go see the Braves play there. And we were sort of getting very excited because the Braves, which had not done well throughout history, Greg can correct me on all this stuff later, were doing quite well in the 90s. I don't know what year it was, but Andrew might be able to help me out with that.
Well, he played between 89 and 96.
Okay, so it was sometime in the 90s. All right. So I bought tickets for the Mets versus the Braves at Shea Stadium. And I took James to the game. And from those games in Atlanta, I had my Braves jersey on. We sat in traffic for 2 hours to get to Shea Stadium. It was Shea back in the day. And we got to the stadium. So we're late. I walk in, my Braves jersey, in Shea Stadium, and we sit down. And so I don't know a whole lot about baseball except what Greg and James and Dad have taught me all those years. But as I remembered it, the Braves were expected to win. And we're in a stadium full of Mets fans. So anytime they even catch a ball, everybody stands up and starts clapping, going crazy. I can't clap right now, but everybody was clapping. And I'm sitting there with my Braves jersey on. So I don't know if y'all know this about James, but James would watch a game of baseball and sweat and scream at the television. Just absolute, get so involved, be sweating and screaming, and people were like, we heard something going on. I'm like, yeah, that's just James, the baseball's on. Okay, so we're sitting in the stadium, and amazingly, the Mets
tie up the end of the game. They fill up all the bases, tie up the game, and it goes into extra innings. So by now, James is going nuts. We're all going crazy. And people were standing up and leaving. And James and I were like, what is wrong with you? This is your team. They just tied up the game. What are you doing? Sorry, gotta go. Walking out of the stadium. And we were like, oh my God, these people. Oh my God. Could not believe it. Could not believe it. I'll never forget that night. Never forget that night. You know, the fact that we went there, you know, we were having such a good time. It was such good baseball. And it was so great to be together and enjoy that, you know. And I don't know if everybody was looking at me like the way you're all looking at me right now, because I had that Braves jersey on. Go Braves! But such a memorable time, such a great night. And he always thanked me whenever I took him to a good game. You know, but that was one of the memorable times. So I spent time.
We take all the other comments, so you'll get to see them in arrears.
Everybody heard me, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Anybody else wants to speak live? Otherwise, I can start reading the ones that got emailed in. Anybody? Oh, all right, give me a moment. Wait for it to come around on the guitar. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Ellen. Don't worry, Judy.
Okay, this is from Raina Accardi. Anybody here know Raina?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Looks like Nico and I will not be coming to the memorial, but I want to share some of my thoughts about James. I think of James as a kindred spirit. We both grew up in NYC, which kind of make us members of the same club. We went to the same community on Fire Island as kids. We went to music and art high school with my sister Gia when I was attending City College nearby. He went to music and art. I remember hanging out on some special day on the sidewalk in front of the school. Not on the sidewalk, okay. Who knows? School. I believe he bowed to me and kissed my hand in greeting. I was impressed with his wild hair and army fatigues. It was the 80s. I always loved his thick head of hair. Better gray than nay. Hair. A few years later, he attended Purchase with a number of my friends and my other sister, Nico. I occasionally went up to spend a weekend to party. I remember him cool in a leather jacket at a movie screening party of one of the many talented Purchase actor and director friends. A bunch of us went out for Indian food on 6th Street in the city once, where I learned of his stomach ulcer. I'll never forget that he had shag paneer. It may have been the first time I ate Indian food. He was indispensable as my food guide, I think for a lot of people, helping me to order. A bit later, we found ourselves as neighbors in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn. We had a number of common interests that kept us occupied with casual conversation whenever I bumped into him in the neighborhood. You know, I'm seeing recurring themes here with James. You know, friendships that just keep cycling back. So he's not gone yet. We had a number of common interests that kept us occupied with casual conversations whenever I bumped into him in the neighborhood. We both loved to eat good food, and he would often tell me what was on his menu for the night's dinner or advise me on recipes. We both loved our cats, fixing up our ground floor Brooklyn apartments and making our gardens sprout. We were both computer nerds, aren't we all? I was in graphics, but I was a wannabe techie, and his conversation around his IT work made me feel like one of them. More recently, he was a good Facebook friend, actively posting about his loves, his people, his dog, his house in the country, and Land's music, his father's incredible life, etc. I kind of feel like I met his father. I heard so many stories about him. That's a nice thing. I also moved to the country and appreciated the connection with someone from my previous citified life. He sent me the most amazing birthday cards that he invested effort and time into creating that was really touching. He taught me that stuff matters. Kindness was something I think he cultivated in himself. I miss his kindness and his wit, knowledge, intelligence, and talent. He was tethered to parts of my past that had been cut. Our connection skimmed the surface of time like a skipping stone on water, dipping in and out of the path of our lives. I will miss him. Somebody from the studio audience, give my voice a break. Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
Hi, I'm Maren.
Marvin. Marvin.
Jack, you need to hold him. Yeah. For those of you who have known me for most of my life, you know I'm not good at telling stories and I'm not good at public speaking. So I'm going to read something that James's father wrote to him on his 40th birthday. To fit at 40, you came from nowhere and from eternity, from nothing and from everything. 40 years ago, 40 years, when I looked into your enfant eyes before they had begun to focus, I thought I could see into eternity, and Jacques Temple had written a poem about a child startled into life by the movement of a pigeon on the sidewalk. So I wrote a poem too on the same subject after seeing it happen actually in Riverside Park, you and the pigeon, when you were 3. The poem is around here somewhere, among all of the things that have accumulated over 40 years. It's so nice to see you now, and to know that love begins at birth and goes on forever.
I'm Maren's mom, and I don't remember when I met James. I'm about to make my 47th move in my life, and I might have been living on actually at 41 West 96th Street when you started seeing James again, or maybe I was in West New York across the river. But I used to go in after church. I sang in a choir in Rockland County, and I would drive down and across the river and to Pamela's house because we would have wonderful lunches there. We always celebrated Easter, and that's when I first met James, and he was the most amazing cook. And then after Pamela died, one of the things that made me deeply, deeply happy was that he started to call me Mom. And that meant so much to me because I thought of him as my son. And I'm going to embarrass myself horribly and all of you, but I'm going to sing a song for him from Noel Coward, which I think Pamela would have loved. I'll see you again whenever spring breaks through again. Time may lie heavy between, but what has been is past forgetting. His sweet memories across the years will come to me. Though my world can go awry, in my heart will ever lie just the echo of a sigh. Goodbye. And that's for James. I really miss him.
Okay, this one is from Matt Liam Ebert. Okay, y'all. The saddest thing about coming and going on Facebook is you miss mourning in unison when a beloved dies. James was the tits. Maybe that's a typo, I don't know. I just read them. I'll miss him dearly, and because I'm a hopeless sky god devotee, all curious, I will pray and dance and sing and dream about a place where all the good people go. And remember that place is here even now. Excuse me. James has left the building, but his memory endures. House lights up. He is surely with his spirit family now. Or on the winds, what rises out of your body when you blow milk out of your nose. Laughing until you cried. Grief, sympathy, and what remains of stubborn memories. Here's my cat and dog on the farm, James. Life is still nuts. Rest in peace. Wow. Okay, from Oriole Morgenstern with a Z. Anybody know the name? Okay, well, James knows. Him, her. I first met James when I got hired as photo assistant to photographer Stephanie Sednawi. Stefan Sednawi, thank you. At the Taga, at the Tagada Boom Boom Studio on Great Jones Street in New York City. I had just arrived in New York City in September 2001 and was in charge of every aspect of the digital photography in the studio, as I was trained with some database programs, basic networking skills, and everything Apple. I started fiddling with the network, the updates of the computers, etc. And this is where James comes in. He was regularly coming to our office prior to my hiring, and we were always discussing everything. I felt like a trainee around him, not because he was being condescending, but because he was so keen on sharing his knowledge with someone who potentially would take work away from him. As long as they take it away and keep it away, I'm very happy to give work away. So when it comes back, So, however, James never saw it that way, and we were on the phone regularly to talk about tech stuff, but not only. And one evening he called me up knowing I was alone in New York City. I had arrived from France and my future wife and girlfriend had returned home already. And James took me around town from one pub to the next, and we sat with his old friend, I can't remember his name, but he passed many years back. And talked about everything. In that instant, I felt like a son to him, a friend and a work colleague. The night went by like this, sipping Dougal beers after Dougal beers. He had good taste in beer. The night went by like this, and I remember this evening to this day, mostly his communicative, I think it's supposed to be contagious laughter, and his kindness. Anybody else? I keep going? Okay, next one from Music and Art class of '82. Alumni of the High School of Music and Art hold a special bond. We're not sure how to describe it, but it's something that's felt. We feel joy, laughter, peace, and a shared bond for the love of music and the arts. We create a safe space for each other every time we come together, even 42 years later. The class of M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Music and Art, 82, sharing grief and love for James Knight. Since our graduation, we have organized reunions separately from events at the school, of course. As we're entering our 60th year, we decided not to wait every 5 years, but come together every 2. Last summer, we were hosted by a classmate in Norwalk, Connecticut. James did what he did best, controlled the grill with laughter and love. One classmate remembered James as, quote, a good friend in art history class. We shared a lot of laughs and appreciation for the arts. I liked having James as a friend. In M&A tradition, each graduate provides a quote under the yearbook picture. James's quote was, "Don't give the game away, sell the swindle." I'd like to point something out. Only an honest person would write that. A grifter would never. Okay, so just so we're all clear on that.
That's your corporate part of it.
And she says, I have no idea what that means, but we're sure someone does. Okay, there it is. On behalf of the class of '82, we send our heartfelt condolences to those who lived, loved, and learned from James. May his memory bring you smiles and joy. Okay, I got one last one, and then it's up to you guys, or we can eat. Okay?
Can I go now?
Yeah.
I'll segue from the M&A.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can keep it together. My name is Jeff Green. I'm a New York City kid, just like James and Greg and a few others here, and Marin, who I've known for probably 50 years. But I want to say that you meet people in life who uplift you. You meet people in life who are positive. That's my relationship with James, period. There was never a bump. There was never an argument. There was never anything that was brought you down. It was always uplifting. And that's my experience with James, and that's one of the reasons I'm so drawn to him. Marin let me know I'm not on social media. I haven't been for years. She reached out. The minute I found out, I booked a flight, came in from California to be here for him. To segue from music and art, my sister went to school with James. And when I told him I was coming, I'm going to go back down to the city and see my family and stuff tonight and tomorrow. But I said, do you remember James? He went to school with you at music and art. She goes, oh, I'm not sure. And then she looked him up in the yearbook that you just quoted. And she wrote on the side of his yearbook after they met, she said, turned totally punk. And on the other side, she says, was a sweetie. Metamorphosis. But punk in the good sense, punk in the rebellious sense. And over the years, like I reached out at one point, we were talking, and he was talking all this, you know, the technical stuff that he does, and I had some great ideas, you know, and I was like, oh, I got a guy now who can bring these to fruition, you know. And so I was talking to him about some things that I had, and it was always positive, always helpful, always uplifting. I met him in college, but we have a history that preceded that, which was really fun for me, because he used to come see the band that I was in when we were young, and he said he really loved it. And we would go out and put flyers. He actually took a wet flyer and put it up in his room. I had a fan. It was Pop Apocalypse, this band back in the day. And so my memories of him are all just good, and I was always drawn to him. And to have that relationship that was so pure can only come from someone like James. So, greatly missed. I believe a lot of things you said about he's here. He's affected me. I'm sure he's affected all of us. And we will go through life with a bit of positivity from James, and I thank him for that. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
You gonna speak?
I'm Rainier. Hello. I have the Burger Shack here, and James has been coming here for, I don't even remember how long, it just seems like always. And he really loved my Blue Max, which was a burger, medium rare burger with some gorgonzola on it. It's no longer called the Blue Max. It'll now be called the
Jim Mac.
Finn Burger actually might be better than the Blue Night, which is, I thought, what I should call it.
Ooh.
Maybe the Finn Burger's better.
Finn Burger.
Wait, what's it going to be? Finn Burger or the Blue
Finn.
Night?
Finn.
The Finn? All right, that's what it'll be. He occasionally got the bacon. He got the extra bacon. Yeah, for sure. That was not on the menu, but I was hot for it. So, it's really hard. People out here, I don't make a lot of friends. And he was a friend that I had made, and I'm grateful to miss him. So I just have to say I'm really happy that we redefined WWJD. What would James do? So thank you all for coming.
just allergies. It's not typhoid or typhus or anything. Just all those beautiful flowering trees, they're coming for me. Okay, Dominique Ezway.
Yep.
My dear Marin, as you might have guessed, I will not be with you tomorrow physically, but I will think of you all day. Here comes my message. Drum roll, please. Dear Finn, you are like my American cousin. You know, the kind you don't see often and enough, but matters so much. I will remain your French cousin, the French cousin of your family forever. You know, I've lost a lot of people over the last 15 years. I also found out that I had lost somebody 30 years previously, who I didn't know had passed, and that was a whole nother thing. It gets easier with time, I think. You start realizing that, you know, we have the moment, and then someday the moment is gone. You know, all my mentors are dead. I'm not that old, but they're all dead. And you just got to keep moving forward and bring with you the good stuff that you got from them. And, you know, that's what they want. They don't want you to sit around crying and moaning. I mean, I think Finn approves of this party. I think this is exactly what he would want. So. Anybody else?
Can I just say that there is a book here for everybody to sign, so please make sure you do.
Also, I'm going to be, because there's not enough food, I brought a bunch of kielbasis that we made from one of my cows, and her time had come. And I'll start grilling them if people want them. There's sauerkraut over here and mustard and all that kind of stuff. So, all right. Are we good?
Do a toast for
To
James.
Finn. And to all of you. There.